for this all my life. You're just my type. I've been looking for a boy who can treat me right.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Scheananigans. This one today, I want to say it's for the ladies because I know it's mostly ladies listening, but my guest is not just all about the ladies, but she is all about that feminine energy. She is the founder of Rewriting the Mother Code, lead faculty member, senior life coach, and director of family programs for the Right Foundation for the Realization of Human Potential. Miss Dr. Gertrude Lyons, how are you?
Oh, I'm doing so well. Thank you so much, Shane. It's just a delight to be here.
Yeah, I'm so excited to have you. When I got the pitch to have you on and they sent me just everything you're about and your website and everything you speak on, I was like, this speaks to my heart. Do you want to should we just get right into it?
Yeah, let's dive right in.
Okay.
Yeah, wherever you want to go. I'm game.
Okay. So one thing that I read about you was that you had this deep-rooted fear of being a mother. And that's one thing for me. I mean, I am a new mom. My daughter's about 1.5 years, but I just feel afraid every day. I had a miscarriage before her, my whole pregnancy, and I've just had this deep-rooted fear as well. So I wanted to ask you, how did you feel safe enough to release that fear?
Yeah, so thanks. We are jumping right in. I love it. I do. I really do. Thank you. Yeah, so a big part of my mothering journey. So this was pre-conception. This was me just because I was one of those women. I had gotten married, but my husband and I had started doing some the couples counseling and growth work. So I would have thought like, okay, I got married, and my mom said, well, now you should have children, right? So that programming in my mind was kind of robotic, like, oh, I should have a child now, okay, but we started listening to our own voices, and my husband and I decided we wanted to wait some years because we were young. We were mid-20s. We're like, we have some time. Let's be a couple first and whatnot. So then as it started approaching, and I'm like, well, I've always wanted to be a mom, and so it should be no problem there. But when I went off birth control, I didn't get a period. So immediately things weren't working as planned, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, there's that fear, right? Like, oh, this thing I thought I was just made for, supposedly, one of the mothering myths, because we're made for much more, but that's a side note.
Yeah.
But at the moment I thought like, oh my gosh, right? So I started on this journey, and, a holistic journey of looking physically, looking emotionally, looking spiritually at like, what does this part of the journey mean? And I really kind of disliked my encounter with the Western medicine message, which was all about, well, looks like you have a problem. So their immediate fix is always like, take this medication. And believe me, that serves its purpose. But I'm like, I'm not there yet. Like that sounds scary. That sounds scary to me.
Mm-hmm.
But it was really this like deeper personal exploration and I was doing therapy at the time, and then a modality of like some deep like breath work and body work, and something, well, I might cry, but we'll see.
Oh, I'm sure I will as well.
That came up unexpectedly in this breath work body work session was, I'm afraid to be a mother. I'm like halting all things happening inside there because I'm afraid. But what came after that, it's like, okay, yeah, we could all be afraid to be a mom, but it was that I was afraid to be a mother like my mother had been a mother, and that was upsetting, disturbing. It's like, whoa, what did that mean? Right. And all of that to say, I had no idea all that was going on inside. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And, this fear that I would do some of the things that I didn't like about how my mom mothered me to whatever child I had. And I felt like I had no control over that. And it scared the crap out of me. And, but once I got to that awareness, I could release it. Then I could do something with that. It's like, okay, I felt all the feelings about it.
Yeah.
The fear, the upset, the anger at my mom even, but not a blame, but like, this isn't okay kind of space.
Mm-hmm.
So, that was like that initial fear experience. Now I've had numerous since then, but I think having that one be so big and hit me so hard, it also gave me a pathway to realize that I there's going to be a lot of things that are going to come up that I'm afraid of on
Yeah.
this journey. And it's, unless I decide to like look at them head on from, some of this historical material, they're going to control me, and I won't have control of the situation.
Yeah, well, I feel like this was also a pathway for, you know, your whole brand that you've built with helping women. So that's why I kind of wanted to jump right into that, because I know that was a little bit of the
Yeah.
background of where you've got to where you're at today. So tell me a bit about, you know, rewriting the mother code. I know for the last 21 years you've been empowering individuals, you know, whether it's couples, parents, families, to just be the best at everything they do. So obviously this came from personal experience, but can you tell me a little bit more about the rewriting the mother code?
Yeah, absolutely. So if we look at it, I'll just kind of name some of what that actually is about, and then we can also maybe look at like how it came to be, because I didn't get to this because I did it all so perfectly. Now I'm going to help women, rewrite their mother codes. It was because I hit a big awareness when my daughters were teenagers that it's like, wow, I was in the midst, I was a coach. I was supporting other parents, mothers, people, on this journey of conscious parenting, consciousness, self-awareness, type things. But there was a point in my mothering that I kind of stopped doing my own work, and it kind of became about others. It became about my children. It became about like what I knew at that point about helping other women, couples, whoever. But I kind of shut myself down, so that hit me. That was something that hit me pretty hard, much later, with some big regret and remorse. And that's when I decided to study it, right? That's when I decided to look at like, well, how did that happen? If I'm, steeped I'm in a community of support, and I can still like shut it down. Like this is hard.
Yeah.
But I also knew from experience and seeing other people that were, hanging in there and doing it, that it was also beautiful. Like there was something about staying engaged and present with yourself and your own growth journey as you raise children, that had a lot to offer. So I decided to study it. And that's when I got my second master's and then a doctoral degree in the transformational opportunity in mothering, like what can happen, So rewriting the mother code came out of that because some key pieces that my research showed was that we're wired, just what we were talking about, right? Like I was wired, and that wiring had unconscious fears that I didn't even know were going on. So our culture wires us, our childhoods, the way we were raised, good, bad, and different, right? It doesn't mean it's all bad. It's just this awareness, like the Matrix movie, right? We're programmed.
Right.
And the more we tell the truth about how programmed we are, the more we can then make conscious choices and a vision for ourselves and really have, the mothering journey that we want, that matters to us, that's right for us, and people might, even experts might say like, that's not the right way to do it. Right. Because there's plenty out there. So it's really not like I'm trying to say, here's the code. It's more, let's find out what your code is, and let's discover what the codes are and then rewrite them for you and what's going to work for you.
Yeah, I love that. I was looking at your website this morning when I was just going back over everything, and I just wanted to point out there was one thing that you said on there that I really liked. And you said, feminine energy is not just for women, but instead something we all possess. It's the power to birth something new into this world, a product, an artwork, a company, the list goes on. And I was like, I really liked that. And yeah, so do you want to just tell me a little more about, just your take with the feminine energy and how you can put that into, more than just mothering?
Yeah, for sure. Because that was something that became bigger in my when I was doing my doctorate or studies than I expected, because I figured I would just be working with either women and gearing, this study and what I hope to do for women that were either preparing for motherhood or, to have a child, and beyond, right? I wasn't necessarily looking so much at all women, but in some work I was doing personally and in my own coaching, it was this concept was brought to my attention, like, oh, well, all women mother. And I was like, well, yeah, that makes sense. Of course we do, right? And just what you described, right?
Right.
We all conceive, create, give birth to ideas, relationships, careers, and everything. And yes, children, right? So it was something I brought into the study. I did a seminar and I studied the women in the seminar. And these were all women who didn't have children yet. And that had so much grab for them. It's like, I can live this mothering journey in so many ways. And I'm not just pigeonholed like a child is the only way I'm going to have this experience. Now, I'm not saying, they're all unique experiences, right? Like having a child is a unique experience, but there's so much more commonality to it. And this mother energy that's so powerful in us, there's so many divine archetypes, that exemplify it in every culture and in every manifestation, right? And creator, destroyer, nurturer, these aspects of mother that are so powerful. Like we don't have to just have a child to try and embody those, right? We have them within us and we want to bring them to everything. We want to bring them to our relationships, to our careers, to a dream that we have. And when we do that, oh my gosh, so much is possible.
Definitely.
But the thing that I want to underline, and all of that to say, the most important person we need to mother and the one that's generally the most neglected is ourselves.
Yeah.
So that kind of brings us back to the rewriting the mother code, right?
Totally.
Because that whole statement is not something that's, commonly thought of in our culture.
Yeah.
Or a possibility. And it's, but we're that's what we're working to bust open and provide for all of us, so much more possibility on this journey.
Yeah, for sure. Because there definitely is, mom guilt is real. And, so many parents, I feel, are plagued with that. And when, attending to their own needs and whatnot, it's just, I feel every time, I have to go out of town for an event or I have something, it's like, I do always feel guilty, but I'm like, I do still have to work mainly. But, you still have to have that aspect, I feel like, of living your own life to just still feel like yourself. Because if you do just get completely lost into, this new mom life, I feel like it could really kind of take a toll on some women's mental. And it is the hardest, scariest job in the world. I am terrified every single day. When I'm alone with her, I'm like, oh my God, please don't choke. Please don't this. Like, it's just like, it's scary. I'm like, I'm an anxious person. I have been my whole life. And I'm like, God, should anxious people not have children? I'm like, no, so many people are anxious out there. But do you have any tips for, women out there who do have those type of fears, surrounding motherhood and just always thinking something's going to happen?
Yeah. Well, we'll speak to you and this fear, right, that comes up. So it's kind of ever present there. And first of all, it just makes me so mad, like that we have a culture that thinks like, oh, I'm worried about my child, so there's something wrong with me, right? And that we get so anxious about it. But it also on the flip side shows how much you care, right? And you care a lot, and it's this precious little being, and it's a life, right? And there's nothing else you've done that you have this much responsibility. It's yes, your career, the work you do, and out there you can make mistakes, but they're not generally like life. Someone's life usually isn't at stake, for those. So, when it comes to looking at how do we, look at or explore that guilt that comes up. So guilt happens because something outside of us is programmed in there saying that we're doing something wrong, right? So we have guilt because there's a culture that says I can't also enjoy my career and my life and love my child and provide everything that she needs, right? So that's where guilt comes from. So we can name that, number one, and explore it, but then we can look at like this anxiousness around the fear I have of being with her. And this is where you get to explore yourself, right? Like, oh, like what I've never had this, I've never felt this way. I've never felt quite this triggered by worry, in this way? Where did that come from? And not in necessarily a bad way, but it's like, were there other times in my life that I worried like this? Or, there's some gift of insight in that feeling, especially when it's something that comes up consistently. Like, I think that's one of the gifts that our children are for us, is these little mirrors to stir up our unfinished business, right? The
Oh my
things
God,
that
yes.
we have to work on and heal, right? So there's something in that fear for you that she stirs up that might have a little bit to do with her and, worried about her, but I have the feeling she's very well tended to. And,
Totally.
we don't have any major concerns about her daily safety.
Yeah.
But so then it just seems like I should just dismiss it. Like, that's ridiculous. No, but there's something in you that is there and precious. And, what's happening with little Shayna, and that can cover the gamut, but that we can do something about, that we can explore, that we can dig into with support, or, and a beautiful conversation with your husband, any of that, like, gosh, like what's going on here? And let it be an opening to conversation versus just something I think I'm supposed to get over and fix. Because it's not something that's just your mind's going to say, like, stop it. It won't. There's
No, not at all.
that needs to happen.
Yeah. I know. I feel like my deep rooted fear is like, I don't really have the ability to see into the future. Like, I'm like, why don't I picture her going to high school? Like, I'm just so afraid something's going to happen before she gets there. Or like, I'm like, what is it? Because it's just something deep rooted that I'm trying to work through. And when I got the offer for you to come on my podcast, I was like, okay, someone else, has deep rooted fears of being a mother. And obviously that's not just me. I think it's something so relatable. So
common.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, I just want to acknowledge and appreciate your vulnerability and sharing that, and just that came up right there, right? Like, I'm afraid to picture her in high school, because what if something happens? And I know you've talked about this and have shared very openly about your miscarriage, right? Sometimes just a recent event like that can trigger that fear. Like,
yeah.
Yes, she's here now, but who know, can I really trust that she's going to be here till high school? And that's, you can notice that. And then just like when for having a bad dream, right? Like, have the feeling, let yourself have the feelings about it. And then just bust right through that and picture her in high school. Like, damn right, she's going to be in high school and college and beyond, and give yourself those visions and pictures to help, counteract this.
Yeah.
But I think that it just also is bringing up, there's maybe some more mourning and healing to do around your loss.
Yeah, I think so. You said the word trigger, which I wanted to ask you. I know one of the things that they said for me to ask you about was about how to use them to your advantage to heal deeper. So can you expand a little more on, like, some tips to self-soothe through the chaos and identifying a trigger?
Yeah. Well, you've just identified.
I feel like I know my triggers. I feel like I do know what my triggers are. But for those who sometimes, like my husband and I'll just be upset and then I'm like crying. He's like, what's wrong? I'm like, I don't know. I don't know why I'm feeling this way right now. So for those moments, what would you say are some ways and like some actions and steps you can take to identify the root? Yeah. Well, and you even mentioned the word self-soothe, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when we feel that like heightened anxiousness come up, or, and it could be any one of our emotions, but we just feel it in that moment very strongly. What can we do in that moment? And then we can do more beyond that, right? So in that moment, I'll name a few, different things. So one that's all neuroscience related and actually like shown to what happens in our body when we have, a big trigger like that is cortisol's released, and, all these things happen, and we have this fight, fright, flee, freeze, that all that, right? Is that it has a 90-second cycle, right? So if I can close my eyes
or I call them mommy timeouts. Like if I have to leave the room, if we're saying this is something specifically in an interaction with our child, leave and allow 90 seconds of breathing, thinking about something, anything other than what was just happening. That can soothe our system and soothe our nervous system such that we're not in our kind of more primal part of our brain, and we can actually start thinking again.
Yeah.
And bring ourselves there. So that, in the moment of really strong emotions and don't know what to do, like that's one idea. But then we want to take that and look at it, explore it further, so we notice this pattern, there'll be certain things that your child does that stirs this up. Sometimes it's them wanting you a lot, or, maybe they're clingy to you, or maybe they're standoffish. There's something, or they're not listening, right? There's often a trigger is like that, just loss of control. Sometimes we have, we just want them to do what we want them to do.
Yeah.
Where does that come up in my life? Like, where is the deeper rooted, history in this? It's always going to come back to some, wound, upset, experiences. And they don't have to be like one, like super profound. It could be the atmosphere that we were in, growing up, that maybe, this is going to be more extreme, but maybe it was an alcoholic or a violent atmosphere. So we learned how to control that by keeping everything in control. Right. So we'll just, we have Uber to-do lists and we just keep a very tight control in our life. But children aren't they're not that. They're the antithesis of that, right? Yeah. They're just free form and like, and they're this thing, and that is going to trigger, right? Someone who's spent so much time, carving their life to control that, of course, that's going to stir stuff up. But then, we can work on that with someone, and that's our chance to heal. And then when we give our child, maybe when we were upset as a kid and we had upset, nobody came to us or nobody soothed us. So, I'm going to give that to my child.
Yeah.
But we want to make sure when we're doing that we're also kind of imagining little us, that when we're giving the things to our child that we didn't get, that we can picture our little self next to them. It's kind of almost a meditation type thing that we can do. So does that help? Does that kind of give?
Yeah. No,
it's kind of concrete.
Definitely.
Some ways.
Yeah. I wanted to also talk about reparenting ourselves, so we can just always show up, as the best version of ourselves. And I've told my friends this, one of my girlfriends, her son is 4 months now, and she told me she was getting a night nurse, and she goes, please don't judge me. And I was like, first of all, I don't judge anyone who has help at all. I said, just because I didn't have a night nurse doesn't mean I'm going to judge you. I said, whatever you have to do to show up to be the best version of yourself for that baby, that's all that matters. If you can't breastfeed for longer, you can't at all, the kid's getting formula, the kid's fed, that's fine. I said, you do whatever you have to do because you're going to know what's best for your kid. And she was just like, oh my God, she's like, I've just been like so nervous to tell people, that I have a night nurse. And I'm like, no, if that's what you need, then that's what you have to do. Yeah. And I just think that's so important. I think more, people need to know that you do still have to take care of yourself, because if you're not happy and taking care of yourself, you're not going to be the best version to your child.
100%. No, and what a gift you gave her, right?
Yeah.
To open that space up and free her from thinking that she has to feel a certain way because of what other people are going to think. But that goes back to the most important person we need to mother is ourselves. And, I know it's kind of out there and we say it, the putting your oxygen mask on first and then your child's.
Yeah.
Right. But we know that as a concept, but we have all this wiring that tells us that's not really true, right? People are going to judge me, or, I'm not a good mom. A good mom would just do it all, right? Like that.
Yeah. I mean, I feel that way sometimes too, where I'm like, but I see these other women who do it. So it's not that I can't, but I maybe sometimes don't try because I do have the help. I have my mom, I have my husband. I'm very fortunate. But then I see these women who are just doing it on their own, and men doing it just on their own. And I'm like, wait, you don't have anyone like and it's like, just because they don't, everyone's story is different. And I think
Right.
that's another thing that we do too, is we compare ourselves. And
Yes.
it's the devil. Like,
It
we
is.
shouldn't do it.
One of the
But
worst-
it's
one
just
of the
so,
worst things.
it's so
I
easy
know.
to do. And
Right.
I did that recently, where I'm like, okay, but if my friend can do this with her 2 kids and she has no help, then why do I feel like afraid to do it on my own?
And are you afraid to do it on your own? Like, and that's because it is something to explore, right?
Yeah.
So, but go ahead. Yeah,
No, I
know
do
what
feel like when I'm home alone for too long, like an extended period of time, it's 8 hours or whatever. It's not just, oh, my husband has to go to this for a few hours, or my mom, or whatever. But when it's a long period of time, I just get nervous. What if something happens when I'm here by myself with her? What if this? What if that? And I have all these what ifs that I'm just like, oh my God, get out of my head. Like, you're fine. She's fine. I'm not going to feed her food she's going to choke on when I'm home by myself. But I also have a life hack in case, God forbid, I needed it. So I feel like I prepare for the worst, but always hope for the best. But I just have those thoughts in the back of my mind, and just those fears of something might go wrong when I'm here by myself. And am I going to know what to do?
Yeah. Well, and I think that's beautiful because, first of all, what we're saying is any choice we make is our choice, and it's great, and we don't have to justify it to anybody. So, you choosing to spend whatever amount of time and then you're off, doing your career, great. But when you bring up something like, and I'm also and I'm afraid, right? When I have that there's a kind of point in time where the fear starts building. Well, we don't want that to be the reason, right? That you're going off. We want, to expand that. So if you did choose at some point, like, hey, I'm going to spend a year, doing it all, like the doing it all or whatever, what would I need to work on for myself? And I think you've named this, and because there's a couple things, because you also, I think, said this like early on too, about, just how in the moment, our little ones are, right? They're just present moment all the time. And that can be, it's scary in and of itself. Right. So there might be something else. I'm not saying we have to dig into it now, but there might be something else. Your anxiety kind of goes to these external things, like she's going to choke or die or something like that. But there could be even another layer under that of something, a fear that's getting stirred up for you. And I'm naming one possibility because it was one that was mine.
Yeah.
So not, which was, I have a hard time, like, just being this in the moment for an extended period of time, myself, and I'm okay to, to like kind of take that in short spurts. And, so I had to work on that.
Yeah. And then did you feel guilty?
Of course. Yeah. I felt guilty.
Yeah.
I felt guilty, but, and as I worked on it and kind of explored, the what else was going on, I did start getting to a point where it's like, I'm just going to choose that I'm doing what I think is best for me. And then I'm going to assume that it serves my children in some way. Right.
That's a good point.
That I'm going to choose to say, like, I'm also providing them a model of, a mom, a woman who has a life, right?
Yeah.
That really enjoys being with me, with my child, but I also really enjoy my career. I enjoy my husband, and I'm getting fulfilled in lots of ways.
Yeah.
Because even though kids will kind of act like they should be your center of attention, because that's their job. They want to get as much from you as they can. And then culture will tell you should be with them as much as you can. Like, there's plenty of studies that it's not the best thing for them, right?
Yeah.
They need variety. They need to be with other people. They need to, like, explore and be in the world, and you showing them that that's safe and it's possible and it's okay, to be out there and do that. That's giving them a huge gift.
Yeah, that's so refreshing to hear you say that, because I feel very similar in that way where, my job, whether it's I'm, having to do content one day, whether I'm having to film one day, I'm having to go to events. I am constantly doing emails. I'm multitasking. And so a lot of the time when I'm home, I'm like, oh, shoot, I need to go check that email. And then, oh, wait, I need to do this. And then, oh my God, I didn't upload my vlog. And then, oh, shoot, I got to record a podcast ad. But then I'm like, okay, honey, let's do this. And then I'm like, oh, and it's like, I feel bad sometimes when I'm like, no, I just want to give her 100% of my attention. But I'm like, but I also have to work. So it's hard. And especially when, a lot of work is from home with social media and stuff like that. So my husband said we both need to be better about doing, blocks of time where it's like, okay, right now I'm going to step out of the house. I'm going to go work. You have summer. And when I'm home alone with her, I'm feeling more confident and better that I'm like, okay, now I'm putting my phone down. If someone calls me, it's not going to be an emergency. I'm just going to focus 100% on her for, these couple hours. And then, when she goes down for her nap, I'm going to check my emails. I'm going to clean the kitchen. I'm going to do all of this. And then when she's awake, it's like trying to just balance out the home and work life and having blocks of quality time, blocks of we're both home. So, he can be doing some emails while I'm feeding her lunch and vice versa. And I think that's starting to work well for us.
Good. Well, it sounds like it,
Yeah.
right? Like that. And I think you keyed in on the most important aspect of that, which is the quality time, right? And quantity, there's times where it is nice to have like kind of a bigger space, with anything that we're want to focus on, right?
Yeah.
And our children are the same. So having some space, but that's not going to happen all the time. So just what you're saying, well, 10 minutes of my focus time is a gift.
Yeah.
It's beautiful, right? And I'm going to set my phone down and all this stuff. And I'm mentioning a time because I think we don't think in those small of increments. It has to be so much more.
Yeah.
But 10 minutes of focus time a few times a day is great.
Yeah.
It's so much. And I personally, because I still had my kids at home when I found this study, because there was a study that was done a number of years ago about working moms, part-time moms, stay-at-home moms, and what did the kids think, right? Like, let's hear from the kids on this.
Yeah.
And I was really kind of afraid to look at it, right? they're gonna say it's the thing I'm not doing. And what came out of that study, there was no like one was better or other, or that the kids like wished. Like the key thing was presence, and how anxious are they when they're around me, right? So, and I'm not saying that's like, the easiest thing to be with either, but it was a relief to know that all of them, any one of them works, right?
Yeah.
But how am I taking care of myself? And then what can I do for myself so that when I do have those moments with my kids, I'm as present as possible. And I'm not this just constant, frantic, anxious, a worried person all the time, right? They feel that the most of anything.
Definitely. And that's one thing my mom always tells me too is, like if I'm stressed, Summer can feel that stress. So I try to, if I have to just go upstairs for a few, record an ad, do some emails, I feel like, because when I'm there with her and, she just wants all of my attention, but I'm like, shoot, I have to respond to this. Like, it's so hard when I'm trying to give her that attention while working at the same time. So I feel like sometimes, separating that, you go here and you work for this block and then you come back and you have the quality time with her, and I put my phone away and, I'll get to it when I get to it. But I know there's nothing that pressing that I need to answer in that period of time that I'm doing quality time with her.
Yeah, no, I think that's beautiful. And another thing I want to underline is communicating with them and saying that, like, wow, I'm really stressed right now. I think I'll be more present with you if I go handle these couple things. I'm going to set a timer and I'll be back in 10 minutes, and then we'll set a timer and we'll have 10 minutes together. And like talking through what's going on with you. I don't mean like outlaying like every upset, everything.
Yeah.
But also like pretending that we're not anxious doesn't work. We don't want that either. It's like, oh, I'm fine. Like, okay, honey, like we're good. And I'm thinking of these million things. But when we can, tell ourselves and tell them, here's the plan.
Yeah.
I just can't seem to and this might not even be that important, but I'm going to choose to go do it right now. I'll be back in this period of time and then come
Yeah.
back, obviously. And, that creates a huge amount of security for them also. Like, I'm leaving the room now. I'm going to go do this, but, and having them be part of your life, right?
Mhm.
They also don't have to be so distinct. And she doesn't have to understand every word you're saying. That's not even the point,
Right.
Like that they have the language. It's your way of being, and they get that you're sharing and communicating with them.
Definitely. And I know sometimes, it can be frustrating, whether it's, the child, the husband, the work. And so I wanted to ask you, what would you say, like practice responding instead of reacting, and some of the tips to overcoming, whether it's mom rage or just letting difficult energy kind of move through you in a healthy way when you're triggered or overwhelmed? What would you say are some tips to overcome that?
Yeah. So what I'll add to, I mean, we had the 90-second, the
Right.
mom timeout, right? And you can say that out loud too. It's like, I'm really upset about this. I'm going to go take a time. I'm going to go take a time out myself. So, saying that, but then we also want to start, Shayna, is having a healthy relationship with our emotions, and being able to identify them as they come up is huge, right? So I always focus on 5 primary emotions: fear, hurt, anger, sadness, and joy. And, in those moments, like, we're calling it rage, but it may have started way earlier on of annoyance, right? Um, or it started earlier in the day. Your husband said something to you that hurt your feelings, but you just rode right over that, right? And then something happened at work that scared you. And now you're with your child and they do something that triggers, but you have this buildup of unexpressed emotions, like from your day. So that rage in that moment may or may not have something to do with that level. Is rarely what's actually just happened in the moment, when we look at it, honestly. And that's why we feel guilty after. It's like, well, I don't know, I shouldn't have been that angry at her, for that. Well, you weren't, right? You had all this buildup of feelings, but it doesn't mean that in that moment, then, identifying, she could have done something that made you angry, but under that, actually, maybe you were scared, about something that she did. So naming that, whether it's out loud or to yourself, and in the moment, sometimes isn't always, the easiest, but that's what we want to work toward.
Yeah.
Right. So that's something we can kind of practice all day, because usually we're triggered because we've let too much go by. Either and sometimes it's a particular behavior with our kids. Like, we've given them a pass, that's annoyed us. We told them no a couple times, but then they still did it anyway. And then, by the 5th time, we'll lose it. Right. And the mom rage comes out. Well, it's because we didn't handle it back then. So how can we, take it more seriously? And this is where it's always hard, consistently, like, address that issue early on so it doesn't get to that point.
Totally. The last thing I wanted to talk to you about was how an expanded definition of mothering that's like inclusive, self-empowering, how that will allow women to not only feel their best, but also bring out their best.
Yeah.
Because ultimately, that creates a world that works for everyone.
Yeah. So, well, we've been talking about it the whole podcast.
Yeah.
So I love that we're kind of like summarizing, or looking at that, because, starting with that expanded definition that, mothering isn't just motherhood. It isn't just having children. That's this expanded definition encompasses and connects all of us as people, but as women, particularly with, our physiology and our wiring, has this power to connect us and really empower ourselves and each other, with the fact that we have this mother energy. And when we, stop listening, kind of turn down, the cultural and family wiring, and start listening to ourselves and do that deep healing, we're doing the best thing we can do to mother ourselves. And then, once we're taking full care of ourselves, like, oh my gosh, like the things that we can create, the things that, the connections, the deep satisfaction we can have in what we're doing, ultimately being as present in the moment with whatever we're doing in that moment, that it gives us that, right? This expanded definition gives us ourselves, really, it gives us ourselves fully, allows us, to thrive in motherhood, not just kind of survive it or, do it how we think other people are supposed to.
Thrive, not just survive.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, I was just working with a woman right before this, and that's what she was saying. Like, I don't, I feel like I'm just like holding on. I'm like, I know so many of us do that,
Yeah.
but you've already taken a step by saying you don't want, you want something else, right?
Yeah.
You want more than that. And when we can give ourselves that permission to want more, because that breaks a lot of beliefs as it is. And, even she was saying, as I started saying like things about, a vision being totally focused on her and her self-care, she's like, oh, like that sounds selfish. That I know my mother would not approve
Yeah.
of that. So I said, well, that's where the work starts, right? We get to identify that and
Definitely.
start practicing something different.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for getting into
Absolutely.
some mommy shenanigans with
Oh
me.
my God, it was so fun.
I was so excited to have you on. So thank you. Please tell everyone where they can find you.
Oh, okay, for sure. So on Instagram, I'm at Dr. Gertrude Lyons. And then my website is probably the other best place, which is www.drgertrudelyons.com. I'm with a Y and Dr. DR. So DR, Gertrude Lyons.
Yes.
And so I'd love to hear from people. And I obviously hope it shows that this work means a lot to me. And I
definitely
am just thrilled to be able to share it with your audience.
Yes. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate everything you said. That definitely helped me feel better. And I'm sure women all around. So thank you so much for being here. And thank you guys for listening.
All my life.